Hello, everyone, and inside today's episode of Locked On Canadiens, the Habs played a really, really bad game against the Sabres. They play against the Columbus Blue Jackets. We will preview that. And Laura has all the details from Jeff Gorton's appearance on the Sick podcast with Tony Marinaro. All that and more inside today's show.
Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 731 of Locked On Canadiens. As always, thank you for making us your first listen of the day, every day, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you are watching us on YouTube, thank you for subscribing. Make sure you ring the bell so you get notified every time we post a new video. I am one of your hosts. I am Scott Mellon. I'm joined, as always, by the active stick, Laura Saba. And Laura was doing some show prep while I watched the Montreal Canadiens play arguably their worst game of the year at the Bell Center. Laura, how are we doing on this Tuesday night?
I just want to say that, Scott, this is your fault.
This is absolutely my fault.
Go ahead.
No. Go right ahead. Go ahead.
On the last episode, we were talking about how bad the Buffalo Sabres were, and they were on a losing streak, and it should be a cakewalk, and that the Buffalo Sabres were going to dog walk the Canadiens, and that is exactly what happened.
I said 5-2 in my defense for what it is worth. I said 5-2. I thought it would be more competitive than this. At the time of the recording, the Sabres are currently winning 7-2. We are actually recording while the game is still going on because there was no more point in me watching that. Either the Sabres are going to have a monumental collapse, and I will do a full bonus episode in clown makeup if that happens. Like, I will make that happen. It's not going to, based on the way the Canadiens have played tonight. Tage Thompson basically single-handedly beat the Canadiens into submission tonight. Apparently, Jeff Skinner is chirping the Habs bench, despite the fact he plays on a team that hasn't won anything ever and has lost 8 in a row coming into this. Shut up, you're a rat. Anyways, everything that could go wrong in this game went wrong. Gave up a goal under a minute in, gave up another goal 30 seconds later, gave up a third goal 2.5 minutes into the game. Canadiens get one right back after that, and that's about as close as they got in this. Defensively, a mess. Offensively, just not there outside of the usual suspects. Goaltending, Jake Allen's regression hasn't been great, but the team in front of him isn't giving him much. And the Mike Matheson-Joel Edmundson pairing is not one that needs to exist right now. Joel Edmundson hasn't shaken off the rust, and Mike Matheson probably should have been sent on a conditioning assignment, seeing as he hasn't played in 2 months.
Here's the thing. Why not send them both on a conditioning assignment?
I
know you can. I don't think you can with Joel Edmundson. He's played too many games in the NHL after coming back from his injury. I just think, 2 weeks in the AHL for both of them would have been really, really good. I think they're both rusty. I think Joel Edmundson is trying. I also think Mike Matheson is trying. Like, it's not like, I don't want to discredit any of these players, right? Like, this isn't a team where they've given up or anything like that, or they're being lazy. Like, I'm not seeing laziness. I'm seeing errors. I'm seeing mistakes. I'm seeing things that you really don't want to see from a team. But at the same time, like, this is exactly what you said yesterday. I talked about the keys to the game, and you said, they got to take Tage Thompson out of the game early. They couldn't do that. They couldn't contain him, right? And when I say that, I don't mean violently.
I mean violently at this point. Like,
no.
Okay, I will let you finish, and then I will do my little mini rant that I have saved up for this. So
right. Okay, so here's my thing, real quick, okay? Like, a player like that, you have to contain him. When we say take him out of the game, we don't mean violently, for the simple reason that that's not a way to win games in the future, like on a consistent basis. You can do that once. You can't do that every game or every game you play against the Sabres. Just imagine like a 7-game series or something like that. Anyway, don't do that. So that was one of the things that you said. We also talked about defense. That was not good. We said that goaltending needed to be better. It's not better. So
everything like we said. They didn't get to the backup goaltender and Craig Anderson. They didn't convert on their opportunities on the power play, which is a huge issue. And they just didn't contain the biggest threat on the Sabres. He has 5 points. Jeff Skinner has 5 points. focus on shutting that line down. And it just didn't happen. And when I say violently, I don't mean Tage Thompson. Tage Thompson didn't do anything obscenely wrong to the Canadiens tonight. Yeah, he scored a ton of goals, but guess what? That's what he does apparently now. Who knew? The hit that Jake Evans...
Apparently who signed him to the contract. That's who knew.
I was going to say, I thought it was a bad contract at the time, and I'm being proven very wrong, which, cool. You're allowed to change your position on things. Anyways, the hit Ilya Lyubushkin threw with Jake Evans is where I kind of knew this game was going to get away from things, because he blatantly threw an elbow at Jake Evans, was not called for the elbow, was called for roughing afterwards when Jake Evans got in his face and started shoving and punching him and whatnot. And my thought is, how do you look at that elbow, which from every single angle is him leading like this into Jake Evans's head, left him bleeding, and didn't call him for an elbow, but gave him a roughing penalty instead. And then just the Habs tonight came unglued. Jake Allen allowed 7 goals for the first time in his NHL career, smashed a stick over the pipes, which, yeah, if I were Jake Allen, I'd be pissed. I know that he signed on that there were going to be rough nights. This was a loser effort reminiscent of what we saw from the Canadiens last year. Maybe a spark of brilliance here or there, but going 0 for, I think, 6, probably more at this point on the power play is inexcusable, because if they score on a third of those, this is an entirely different game before it gets to even close to 7-2. And it's holding the Canadiens back because there's too much talent on this team to be functioning that poorly on the power play. And at some point, Martin St. Louis got to come up with an answer there. Give the reins to somebody else. Try different form. You got to do something, because if they trot this out again, it's just not working. The Sabres penalty kill is 30th in the NHL. Inexcusable. It's inexcusable, quite frankly. And yes, I get it. Rebuilding. Losses are good for the team. Yeah. I would rather lose a bunch of close games that are exciting than get my dong kicked in like this, because that is exactly what this game was. It was a butt kicking. It was, a bully throwing you face down in the mud. It was bad. You got bullied by a team on an 8-game losing streak on home ice after that win on Saturday.
They wiped the floor with them. That's the problem.
Yes. And that's consistency is always going to be an issue with a rebuilding team. I know that. You can't lose games like this repeatedly. It's bad for morale, and it allows that rot to seep in and everything else. And coming up in our next segment, we are going to talk a little bit about what can the Montreal Canadiens do against the Columbus Blue Jackets, a team who seemingly had their number last week, on how they can rebound and go into American Thanksgiving with hopefully some positive vibes. And we're going to get into that coming up next. But first, our show today is brought to you by the folks at Athletic Greens. I got to say, Athletic Greens is great first thing in the morning. We are getting into the winter months. There is less sunlight, so you need vitamins, and especially vitamin D, to help give you that energy to get through your day. And with Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. They're going to help your immune system, your nervous system, energy, recovery, focus, all of these things. Athletic Greens has all of that. It's lifestyle friendly, whether you're doing keto or paleo. If you're vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, Athletic Greens can be there for you. It costs less than $3 a day, and you're investing in your health. And that's important, because you can't always, like me, buy an energy drink or buy a coffee first thing in the morning. Just take a scoop of Athletic Greens first thing and trust the over 7,000 5-star reviews of the product. So right now, folks, it is time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a glass of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills, supplements, whatever. Just one scoop in your glass of water first thing in the morning. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. All right. Well, that was slightly cathartic, to be quite honest with you, because we haven't really had a show where we've kind of just yelled at the Canadiens for not playing well in certain things. The game is over. They lost 7-2. Not great across the board. Not great. And they have another game Wednesday when you were listening to this, the day before American Thanksgiving. They are playing the Columbus Blue Jackets. And Jay, we love you dearly. The Columbus Blue Jackets this year are one of the worst teams in the NHL. They have struggled to find consistency all year, are missing some of their top players. They are missing like their entire defensive core. They hung 6 goals on the Canadiens last time these two teams played. You cannot do that. You have to make a statement in this game, or there's a lot of questions that are going to come up about people who are on this team or the roles that they are playing. I feel like, yeah, the Canadiens are not supposed to be good, but losing 2 games in embarrassing fashion in back-to-back situations is unacceptable. And the first thing is you got to figure out the power play. I get that you are traveling tonight to go play this game. You got to do something different. Anything. The power play cannot stink that bad in Columbus, and the defense has to be smarter. Laura,
Put Jake Allen out there.
Here's the thing is, I wouldn't be shocked if they play Jake Allen tomorrow.
But on the power play?
Well, I mean,
listen,
based on how it was tonight, it probably wouldn't have made a damn difference if he was sitting at the point you're on. Honestly, with how bad the Canadiens' power play is, they still haven't given up a shorthanded goal this year.
And Scott.
It's going to happen now. And then everyone go yell at me. It's fine. You're not the first people to yell at me on Twitter, but you got to fix the little things here. All the things in the Sabres game were little thing, big thing being the power play, but little thing. It's like when you're combining smalls into making a medium, into making a large, into making a supersize, into making a double gulp. Little things add up to big things. And in the next game against Columbus, I don't care if they win 2-1 or 2-0 or whatever. Do the little things right and do the basics. There's too many players not doing that right now, and that starts with defense. Laura, do you have any thoughts about going into this game in Columbus where, again, the Canadiens should win, but if this game kind of, against the Sabres kind of put me on edge a little bit going into this?
Here's what I think. And so we're going to talk a little bit about this in the third segment because of the Jeff Gorton interview with Tony Marinaro. One thing that we have to remember, and it's something that it's really easy to forget in this market, is that Martin St. Louis has been a coach for less than 6 hockey playing months, 6 hockey playing months, right? Like 6 hockey season months. He's a rookie coach. He is somebody that is a great hockey mind, but these are the games where he's going to learn the lessons that he needs to learn. And this is the kind of adjustment or rebound or, follow up that is going to show us what he's made of. Like, I think that on a lot of teams, when they're good or average or fine or great or whatever, you see a game like this, most of the blame, I think you can say, lies with the players, right? And so it's the players that have to adjust. Like in this case, we're talking about a situation where A, the goaltending is regressing, B, the players did not respond well, C, the power play is failing. You've got players who are coming back not in great shape. You've got a mishmash of young and veteran players. You've got like the situation that he's inherited. So like there's a lot of factors. It's not, the blame falls on the coach or the blame falls on the players. There's so many things going into this game being this bad. Also Buffalo being on a 8-game losing streak and just the odds kind of just readjusting in their favor, all of that, right? So for me, the reaction and what adjustments Martin St. Louis and his coaching staff make, this is one of those games where like this is one of the building blocks of his coaching career because again, we're going to get into this in the next segment. So like he's somebody, the way that he thinks about the game of hockey is very suited to being a coach, to being the strategizer, right? Like what I want to see is like, is he also an adjustment type person? Because that's something that you need to do when you have a good team and you're facing a team that's good, when you're in a long playoff run, when you're in a slump, whatever it is, like as head coach, like if you're going to win, like you need to have those adjustments. So I'm just excited to see what he does. It doesn't necessarily have to be lineup changes, right? Like people sometimes get really upset when a coach doesn't change the lines. when there's a losing. I don't think that. Like, I think it's like what conversations does he have with the players? Like, there's no practice time. They might have a morning skate, right? What conversations does he have with the players? Like what one-on-one moments does he have? What is he whispering in Cole Caufield's ear? What's going on there? So like, I want to see, like, I don't necessarily think that like turning around and like having like a dominant win over Columbus is necessarily what determines if he's a good coach or not. But what habits do they exhibit on the ice in the next 2 or 3 games? And the next game after the Columbus game is on Friday afternoon at 2 p.m. Eastern time. Just so you know, thanks for Thanksgiving. I don't understand why the Canadiens always have to go and play those Thanksgiving games in the United States when they were a Canadian team in a big Canadian market. But let's not even get me started on that. I just think that we're going to learn a lot about Martin St. Louis from the way that the Canadiens play, like those little things that Scott was talking about in the next 2 to 3 games.
I have 2 things before we kind of wrap on this segment. Laura, can you guess what the expected goals for percentage for Kaiden Guhle and David Savard was tonight?
I know they were very, very bad.
How bad do you think? Remember, this goes up to 100%.
The expected goals against, you said?
No, expected goals for percentage. Can you guess what they're not the same, but can you guess what their numbers were?
Like in the 20s.
No. David Savard had an expected goals for percentage at 5-on-5 tonight of 3.78. Kaiden Guhle was at 5.92. Christian Dvorak was at 8.92. I understand why Guhle and Savard are together. I no longer have to accept it, though, because they have other bodies here. And yeah, Wideman and Harris came back in tonight. I don't think they played outwardly bad compared to their teammates. Wideman actually was a net positive in terms of possession and everything. I think Harris and Kovacevic should be back together. And I think Arbor Xhekaj and someone like a David Savard, who's more stay-at-home, or like a Joel Edmondson or something, you have to shake up the defensive pairings going into the game against Columbus. I get you have bodies to rotate. You have to fix this kind of thing now. You don't have excuses anymore. Yes.
The one thing I will say about Kaiden Guhle is that, do you remember when Andrei Markov was the best defenseman on this team? And whenever he had a bad night, the whole team had a bad night. Kaiden Guhle is shaping up to be that guy.
So many people are going to take that out of context. I hope you realize.
Wait, what happened?
I was going to say that they're going to say Laura compared Kaiden Guhle to Andrei Markov and a whole
No.
We know that's not what happened.
I just mean in terms of like their importance to the lineup in a given game.
And I would agree with that. Like, it was just a bad night where defensive errors became an issue. And we'll see what the lineup looks like going into the game against Columbus, because shake things up. I mean, keep the top line together, but shake, rattle, and roll things around here on defense, on offense, on the power play. Figure it out and make it work, Marty. And we're going to kind of switch gears a little bit from very bad games to a very good podcast appearance by Jeff Gorton with Tony Marinaro. Laura's going to take the reins on that, and that's all coming up next. We are back. We are Locked On Canadiens. And folks, just as a heads up, this is my last episode of the week because I am obviously going out of Buffalo to go celebrate American Thanksgiving with Carly's family and my own. And then I am on vacation. So you will not see me for about a week, which, depending on who you are, you might love that. You might not. Keep your eye out for Locked On Canadiens Extras, where we got into more of your mailbag questions and everything. We've got plenty of bonus content coming up. And now I'm going to turn control of this show over to my fantastic co-host, who was doing all the research while I was watching the Canadiens get absolutely punched in the face repeatedly by a very, very angry gorilla as the Buffalo Sabres. Laura, tell us all about Jeff Gorton's appearance on the Sick podcast with Tony Marinaro.
All right. So this is something, again, this is by listener demand. And, when you guys have ideas of things you want us to tackle and stuff like that, like people wanted us to talk about it. Like the Sick podcast is really, really good. Scott's been on it actually. And if you're a Habs fan, you're probably listening to that. And if you're not, you should be, The guests are great. Like Tony has some really compelling interviews. As a Habs fan, like it is one of my staples. And so, I sometimes am late listening to episodes, but listeners will ask us, what are your thoughts on this and that? So we will listen to the episodes and share our thoughts. And to me, like two of the biggest things that came out of that episode, which again, check it out yourself, the Sick Podcast, the episode with Jeff Gorton. It was after I think 15 games or something like that they were having the conversation. So the biggest thing that jumped out at me was Kaiden Guhle. We said that he was bad tonight. He's not usually bad. He's somebody who's really good and people are taking notice. But the way that he talked about Kaiden Guhle, you read between the lines and you can tell that there's interest in him from around the league and that the Canadiens probably consider him an untouchable, even though, Jeff Gorton couldn't confirm or deny that on the podcast. But it's really interesting that, Jeff Gorton's been in the league for a long time and people are calling him up and talking about Guhle or even just asking him, hey, how about that Guhle kid? Like the league is taking notice of this guy. And I think that's like, it's amazing. So like, he had a bad night. We want to break up that pairing. Every Montreal Canadian, I think pretty much other than Cole Caufield had a bad night. Don't tell me his defensive numbers. So that was like one of the most important things is that like, like the league is taking notice of Kaiden Guhle. Like there are calls that are coming in. There was a lot of talk about Martin St. Louis. And one thing that Gorton mentioned was that prior to, Martin St. Louis coaching or, being called by the Canadiens or whatever, people who played with him in the locker room would say he's like a third or fourth coach in the locker room. Like the way that he thinks the game and the way that he talks about the game, like you can tell that this is somebody who has a different kind of hockey mind. Like not everybody is cut out for that job. And not everybody who's played has that kind of hockey intelligence. Like, let's be really honest. Like just because somebody's a former player, that doesn't necessarily mean they're a good strategist. That doesn't necessarily mean that they know how to make players listen. That's not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily mean that they know how to make players tick, which I thought that was like a really, really interesting conversation because I was listening to this at the same time, like basically back to back, and I listened to both of the episodes twice, was, what Kent Hughes said and what Jeff Gorton said. And when people talk about, like these two people and how's this power dynamic going to work and who's in charge and who's doing all of that, the way that they see things is similar enough to me that I can definitely get that it's a shared vision. And it's funny that the way they talk about Martin St. Louis, they said different words, but they meant the same thing. And so that's why in the previous episode, I said, I want to see how he adjusts and things like that, because like he does have, Tony Marinaro said, like this guy, I thought he had the makings of a good coach, but now I think he has the makings of a great coach. I want to see, like, does he adjust and stuff? Because like the thing is, like we are in such a luxurious position right now that I think it was Kent Hughes was the one that said, if it was at the end of a season, maybe like we wouldn't have gotten Marty, but it was the middle of a season. We were just after firing. Martin St. Louis came here on an interim contract or without a contract with an interim tag. Same thing like Jeff Gorton alluded to. And he like started his career here. Like imagine like somebody else had called Martin St. Louis 2 years down the line. And like at that point he'd had some more experience and he was like already a great coach. Like in this case, like this, he might not turn out to be a great coach, but just look at the luxurious position that we're in. If in that hockey brain, there is the makings of one of the great coaches of the NHL, like how long has it been since we've had that in this market? Like, I don't remember something like that. Like, usually you get a rookie coach here so that the Canadiens can funnel more French coaches into the NHL so that they can then rehire them 3 years later, right? This is really like, it's such a weird, like exciting and fun position. Like again, it might crash and bang. Like I said, it's been less than 6 months of hockey season. But I feel like so lucky as a fan and hearing the way the management talks, I also feel lucky as a fan because the thing is, they're clear on what they want and they're clear on what they know. And we might not always agree with it, but there's a confidence to this front office and a proactiveness to this front office. It's not reactiveness. We've talked about it before. So, I'm sure they're making mistakes or they are going to make mistakes. That's going to remain to be seen. But that was just kind of one of like the Martin St. Louis piece of the conversation. Scott, you were about to say something. I'm so sorry.
I was gonna say, like, it is really nice to see that like they believe in him, and it's not just well, kind of get us through this, and then we're gonna boot you out the door for somebody else. Like they trust him at the helm, and I trust Martin St. Louis at the helm a lot more than I would an old school veteran coach or someone else, because every time he talks, I think it was Andrew Berkshire on Twitter pointed out today that it's like gentle parenting. He's not going to go in there and tell them and yell at them and hammer them on things, because they're not going to learn that way. He's going to tell them, hey, this is what you did wrong, and they're going to work on that. The explicit trust Martin St. Louis puts in his players to buy in and do the work themselves is, I don't want to say inspiring because that makes it sound cliche, but like it's very new age in that it's not just superstars. He will go to Michael Pezzetta and be like, you might have done this wrong and this wrong. Let's focus on tweaking those things, and they will. Uri Slafkovsky is 18 years old and gets better every game he plays and learns things. If you go in and hammer him, or you end up in the Shane Wright situation where he's on a conditioning stint in the AHL because the coach just doesn't know what to do with him. It's the perfect fit for a rebuilding team. And I'm curious to see what can he do when, this team's fully operational in a couple of years. If he wants to be here for that. Like he might decide, this coaching thing, it sucks. I might move into player development or something else, or just go back to doing what I was doing. Someone else can reap my rewards for that. Like, I'm glad that the Canadiens seem to have kind of joined the 21st century in terms of coaching here.
There's a couple of other things that I wanted to mention. I know we're running out of time, but I did want to mention it because people wanted our thoughts. Cole Caufield, they talked about how there's no real urgency or timeline. The conversation is going to happen. Jeff Gorton said that they talked to Cole Caufield's agent and they don't want it to be destruction, but they want him to be here for a long time. And he had every confidence that Cole Caufield was going to be in Montreal for a long time. So I'm not too worried about that contract. I don't think we're worried about it. I think we're just impatient for it is the way that I would describe it. One thing that was said in that conversation though, was we're talking about how Cole Caufield is a great goal scorer. And we all know that. Martin St. Louis is the person that's going to help Cole Caufield to become a great player. And I think that's so interesting that was said, because I think that Cole Caufield has immense talent. But something that we don't think about is that when you want to be one of the greats, you have to have, it can't just be one pure talent, right? Like, I don't think anyone's questioning Cole Caufield's ability to be offensively creative or score goals. Like being a great all-around player, like this is like, it's really interesting because like, we were excited about him. I think he is one of the most fun players we've had in a long time. But the fact that they want him to be one of the greats, in my heart, like it warmed my heart when like I heard that part of the conversation. So I think that's exciting. Something else that I wanted to talk about a little bit was just like he talked about how for Arbor Xhekaj, like they didn't even think that he was going to be in the NHL until, until a couple of games before the season started. They were like, yeah, this guy's going to go to the AHL. Then Arbor Xhekaj did everything to stay in the NHL. I think one of the things that I wanted to mention before we wrap things up, there were so many things that I wanted to mention. Is kind of they're talking. Both of them talked a lot about Vinny Lecavalier. Like it's very clear that they're constantly in contact with Vinny. Like the role that he has is kind of like an undefined role. It was just kind of like he's a special advisor or whatever. But it looks like he's involved, right? It looks like he's doing a lot of work for the Canadiens, and I think it's really, really exciting and interesting. And I know we talked about the Kent Hughes portion yesterday on yesterday's episode, but one thing that I forgot to mention was there's like in that discussion, I'm not going to rehash the whole thing, mostly because I don't have the notes in front of me for yesterday's episode, but Kent Hughes talked about why Vinny Lecavalier didn't come here. And it was about tax implications. And I learned a lot from that portion of the conversation. So if you get a chance to check out the Raw Knuckles podcast, the episode with Kent Hughes, obviously, if you listen to podcasts, that's something that you'd be interested in. There is an interesting portion about how Vinny Lecavalier did not end up in Montreal as a player and like the discussion surrounding that and how taxes kind of work. Hearing it from somebody who's a former agent was pretty interesting.
And I will be listening to these. I do have a lot of driving to do over the next couple of days, so I am going to be loading up these. And speaking of which, if you are driving anywhere for American Thanksgiving for our American listeners, hello. For our Canadian listeners, happy Thursday. Take us with you wherever you get your daily podcasts, Google, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever. We are there. And we are also on YouTube. If you like seeing our very, very handsome faces or beautiful faces, whichever one you want to go with, we are on YouTube. Please subscribe. Please hit that bell so you know when we post a new video. And remember, follow us on Twitter at @LO_Canadiens. Follow Laura at The Active Stick, and you can follow myself at Scott Matla. Folks, we appreciate you, and we will see you all next time.